Hello, everybody. This is Donna Andersen, author of lovefraud.com. And today I'm with Stacy Brookman. Stacy is a resiliency expert, and today we're going to be talking about different aspects of love fraud and how you can recover from love fraud, and in particular, how you can use writing to help with your emotional recovery. So welcome, Stacy. I'm so glad to have you here today.
I am thrilled to be here. Love talking about this and helping other people.
Okay, so let's get started.
Yay. Well, I am curious. One of the things that I have found, and maybe you've found this too, is that once we finally find the way to get out of a tough relationship or a toxic relationship, then sometimes we end up going back into either the same relationship or another one just like it. So there's a gap right there where something happens and we just kind of seek out those toxic relationships again. And so there's lots of different ways to heal. And so you tell me some things that you have found to help us, or maybe actually let's just start with why that happens.
Okay.
Why do we go back? Because I've
Well,
done it myself.
yes, I actually have heard this from many people, and many people are like mystified about how they got into these situations and then got into another one of these situations. And there's, I think, two primary things to be aware of. The first is that toxic relationships are not all the same.
Mm-hmm.
So often what has happened, or what people have told me, is that they got out of one toxic relationship and they come across another person, and this person seems to be totally different from the relationship that they just left.
True.
There are, like, the first relationship, maybe the guy appeared to be controlling, or maybe he was even physically violent, or a female, because of course, there are both male and female abusers and exploiters. But for sake of simplicity, we'll refer to a guy right here. And so then the target meets a new person, and this guy seems to be loving, seems to be very low key, seems to have no temper at all, no anger issues.
Mm-hmm.
And then as it goes along, she finds out that the person is passive aggressive, or just more subtle in how they engage in their exploitation and manipulation. So, I mean, that's one of the things that happens fairly often, is just that the presentation totally changes. And, what they had seen previously in an abusive relationship doesn't look like that at all. And it's a totally different type of abuse that the person is experiencing. So I think that's one of the issues. It just doesn't look the same. It doesn't look like what they already came through.
Right.
But the real issue, I think, is that there's still more healing to take place.
Yeah.
And, one of the things that we need to be aware of is that sociopaths, and when I use the term sociopath, I use it as an umbrella term for people who have antisocial, narcissistic, borderline, or histrionic personality disorders, simply for convenience. I mean, that's actually the way the word was originally intended to be used, but it's much easier to say sociopaths than histrionic,
Right.
So anyway, so that's a term for convenience. But anyway, what sociopaths do is that they target our vulnerabilities. And sociopaths just seem to have some kind of radar for whatever our vulnerabilities are. And we all have vulnerabilities. I mean, that's part of being human. Mm-hmm. But typically what happens is that, perhaps we've had bad experiences in our life. Perhaps we've been rejected. Perhaps we've been abused. We've been exploited, or something like that. And all these experiences cause tremendous emotional pain. However, we are not taught to deal with the emotional pain. So typically what we do is that we internalize it.
Yep.
And sometimes we don't even acknowledge it, or we may stuff it inside some internal closet, and then we lock the door and throw away the key. But, this this energy of the pain, of the betrayal, of the grief, of whatever we experienced is still inside us. And so this is what the sociopaths latch onto. They just have this radar for being able to sense the pain that we have inside, the vulnerability that we have inside. And what they do is they promise to make all our pain go away.
Right.
And they promise to make our dreams come true. So this is what they do, is that they just sense what is wrong with us, or I'm not wrong with us, but what we're still carrying inside, because we're all the walking wounded.
That pain.
We all have these experiences that we've had. So they latch onto that. So typically what happens if someone has been involved in a sociopathic or a toxic relationship and then escapes that one and gets to another one, usually what it means is that they have not processed the pain. And processing the pain is hard work,
Yes.
and it's painful to do that too. I mean, you cry, you yell and scream, hopefully not with anybody there. You may need to be physical as far as getting rid of anger or something like that. So if we don't do that, then all that pain is just sitting there, this little radar beacon, and the next sociopath will come along and go bing 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 bing, I know what this one wants.
Right.
And so then you find yourself in another one. Plus what happens is that since you have become vulnerable because of whatever your last experience was, the sociopaths, this is what they do. They target vulnerabilities. So now you have this second vulnerability on top of whatever ancient vulnerability you may have. And this is what draws them in.
Yeah. I think one of the things that I've found too is that as human beings, we have a huge capacity for pulling the wool over our own eyes.
Yes.
And we don't really see that we are vulnerable or want to admit, right? We just sometimes it's not even letting that out. It's just being stoic, like everything's fine. I'm okay. Let me just get through my days and ignore all of those red flags. We tend to I can handle it. And most often we cannot. And you mentioned they have that radar. And I think it's also they get you to talk about yourself. They ask questions. They really dig. And when you really analyze, if you ever go back to analyze, I don't know if anybody's ever recorded any of those, but if you go back to analyze, you're doing most of the talking and they are asking you. And so even for me, when I was introverted, really shy, and when somebody's asking me questions and wanting to get to know me, that's exciting, right? It's thrilling. And yet they are finding out all about you, what you love, what you don't love, what your vulnerabilities are. And then they can use those to, number one, love bomb, and number two, hook you in so that you are hooked. And then so there's that gap between once you're out. I think part of the issue is still what I mentioned was, pulling the wool over our own eyes. It's still there. We've successfully gotten out of that relationship, but we haven't necessarily healed. And I think we think that's it. We don't need anything else. We're good. We're done. But then somebody else comes along that is just the ideal person. And we love that. So for me, and maybe you can tell me this, I had to get to the point where I was happy, completely happy with myself, completely happy to go into old age and be by myself, loved my life, was excited about it before I could even get into another relationship. And I think sometimes we don't do that. There's that, like you said, that emotional pain to process. Have you found that you've got to stop and be happy with your own self and your own life?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. The key is always what's going on inside of you.
Yeah.
And, this is actually so important, and that's why the recovery is so important, because you need to get that pain out. Essentially, when you do it, when you take the time to process your emotions, which essentially means allowing yourself to cry, allowing yourself to feel what you have experienced, that gets it out of your system. Right. And therefore, there's nothing for the sociopathic radar to latch onto.
Exactly.
Yes. So, I mean, this is absolutely critical for any recovery, is to really allow yourself to experience it and get it out of your system. And then you can move forward. And because, what comes into our life is a reflection of what is already inside us. Yeah. And so, processing the pain is certainly an integral part of it. But the second part of that is that as you process the pain and get it out of your system, you want to replace it with positive energy, positive things that happen in your life, So what you want to do is, allow yourself to experience any kind of joy that you can find, and bring that into your energy field, and bring that into you. So eventually, what happens is that you're releasing the negative energy and replacing it with positive energy. And that's when your internal balance starts to shift, and that's when you can have good things come into your life. So that could mean anything that you enjoy, anything that you like. You like sunsets, you like flowers, you like gardening, you like knitting, you like spending time with your friends and family, whatever it is, whatever brings joy into your life, that's what you want to do.
Oh, I love that, because, often we don't even remember what used to bring us joy, or what, you have to kind of re-explore yourself, right? And that's why I feel like writing is such an amazing way to do that. To, number one, get through that emotional pain is one of the ways to process that. If somebody doesn't feel like, or they're not very expressive, or they feel like they don't really want to process that emotional pain, writing is one of the best ways to actually get that out in a safe way. I know there's lots of people who go to therapy, and I did as well. And talk therapy is okay, but talking about it doesn't necessarily get it out. And so I'm a huge proponent of, there are 4 different steps for writing through and about those tough times, that toxic relationship, that will really help get it out and process it for good. And so you don't have to yell and scream, or if you don't feel like yelling and screaming, it's like getting that stuff, because it's like a jumbled mess, right? Like you get brain fog, and it's a jumbled mess in your head, and you don't even realize what you're telling yourself. It's like that mean girl in your head, or those, that past, something from your past, from your childhood, or this past relationship or something like that. They're saying you're never going to be able to be any good. You're a loser, and things like that. So what writing does, it's actually scientifically proven to help heal, like physically, emotionally, psychologically. It is amazing. It's called the 2-minute miracle. Even Dr. James Pennebaker from the University of Texas at Austin has done extensive research, and several others as well. And their research has come out that once you start writing in this very specific way, writing about that pain, those pain points, you are going to be able to take those memories that are stored in the part of your brain that keep coming back sharp as if they just happened, and put them in the regular part of your brain where they can fade just like regular memories. And so the part of it is, well, the first step is to embrace those tough stories, because you've got to acknowledge them, right? A lot of them, friends and family will say, hey, just ignore that. Just get it. The past is in the past. Don't worry about it. Just put it behind you. But when that's coming up, triggers happen, and you keep thinking about it all the time. Or if you're talking about it and that talk therapy just comes back, brings it back and back, you're not going to heal. And so you've got to turn around and acknowledge that first, and then start doing what I call free writing. I love free writing, because it's like not even your eighth grade English grammar, anything. You don't even have to do punctuation or anything. It's just setting a timer and start writing about an incident, just one incident. And if it's too painful, write around the edges. What happened, in your job around that period of time. And so getting that out of your head and into a jumbled, ugly mess on paper or on computer. There's research that says if you write it by hand, it's even better. But for me, I like think and type way faster than I can get it out. So I typed it. But that's the first step, is acknowledging and embracing those stories, because they are your stories. They're part of your history. And then the second step is enabling those stories. And that means getting those out of your head and onto black and white, so that you can see them for what they really are. And what I love about that is when I was writing, I started recognizing, wait a minute, that's a pattern in my life. I realized from kindergarten and grade school and high school and young adult, I didn't stand up for myself. I didn't raise my hand and say, no, that's not right. And for me, I thought, I'm a professional woman, and that's the way I looked outwardly as an adult, but inside I was that little girl and not thinking I was worthy enough of my voice to be heard. And it wasn't until I was in my mid-40s when I started writing, as I was divorcing my sociopath, that I discovered that. And so I love writing as a way to process that emotional pain. Mm-hmm. So
yeah. I actually have been writing all my life. I am a writer. It's what I do.
Yes.
So I had, even when I was a kid, I think I was maybe, 10 or 11 when my grandmother gave me my first diary, and wow. So I used to write all the time, just whatever happened during the day and things like that. But I always did have a journal going, and journaling does help a lot, especially, I could see two ways. Even before we get to the part where you're working on your recovery, mm-hmm. But if you're journaling, even if somebody is still with the person, whoever this toxic relationship is, it's good to write down what happens, because, they'll say, just to have a record of it, because one of the things that a sociopath will typically do, say, something will happen, or they'll tell you something, or they'll agree to something, and then later on they'll say, well, I never said that.
Oh, yes.
That's not what happened,
right.
Or anything like that. So it becomes really important for your sanity just to have a record of what actually happened in the moment. And so that's certainly, and anybody who's in one of these toxic involvements right now, I would recommend doing that, mm-hmm. just because the sociopath, it's called gaslighting. Everybody knows that term now. It wasn't a lot of knowledge about it when I first started Love for All, but now there's widespread knowledge of it. But this is what it is.
Yeah.
When they engage in gaslighting, what they're trying to do is to get you to doubt your own perceptions. So if you write down what happened, and then you have it in your notes, because then when they start saying, what's the matter with you? Are you losing your mind? You need your meds. You better go see somebody. Then you can go back and say, no, that actually did happen. This
right.
is what he said. So this becomes really important as you're trying to figure out what's going on. And then, as you said, as you're starting to escape from the situation and recover from it, it absolutely is helpful. I wrote like crazy,
yeah.
when I was, processing, trying to escape, trying to figure out what was going on. And like you, what I would do is I would look back and say, oh my God, I keep saying the same thing time
right.
after time after time after time. And for years, and it was like, well, this is a problem with me,
right.
and with my perception. And you can also kind of do it in a formal fashion, and by formal, structured would probably be a better word.
Right.
And you could say, well, I think I'm not good enough. And then you write, and then you ask yourself why. And then you write down, well, because, my mother always said this. And then they say, why? And you keep asking why, with each statement, why with each statement. And eventually you start getting down to the real bedrock of, what your experience was, or what your beliefs are, which are probably mistaken, but you can't change your beliefs until you figure out what they are.
Right.
And so this is an opportunity to determine, what your deep-seated hidden beliefs are, these ideas and conceptions that you have about yourself, which are probably not true, but you don't even know that you should be questioning them because you don't know that you have them. So,
that is so true. I mean, even asking yourself, what are my values and what are my morals? I know mine definitely slipped when I was with that person, because like it just kept going lower, and like, wait a minute, I'm living in this type of place. That's not me. So when you start writing about that, you mentioned journaling too, and I'll tell you what, I love writing, but I resisted even journaling for a long time. And here's why. I thought every time I started, because people have said it's healthy, you really need to do it, yada, yada, yada. And it's true, it is. Every time I started it, it was just negative. And I thought to myself, I don't want some future person seeing this and thinking I'm a negative person, because I'm not, and seeing only bad stuff. And so here's what I would tell you. Just start writing. Don't worry about anybody. You can burn this afterwards, later on. Just get all this junk out of your head. Journaling, doing however you can, because you need to be healthy. And that's, again, one of those ways to recover fully after a toxic relationship, so you don't get into another one. Mine started, like you said, with writing down what happened. And I didn't know it was called gaslighting. I had no idea, but my attorney said, write it down, just black and white, no emotion. Here's what happened. And so I started doing that. And then I went actually to a writing class, and just like, I need something just for me that's not divorce, that's not kids, that's not trying to keep my job in all of this chaos. And so I took a writing class, and I would bring these crazy, horrible stories every Friday to the class, and they were like holding my story. They didn't judge me. They didn't, try to tell me what to do. They couldn't fix the problem. There's no way anybody could fix that problem, but they just held my story, and that was so comforting and peaceful. The thing I hear most from people after they start writing is clarity. Mm-hmm. Clarity about who I am, who I want to be. Because you mentioned joy too. Like you can write about your future goals, or the type of person you really want to be when you're free, or as you're free to be who you want to be. You can reinvent yourself in writing, and that's a beautiful, beautiful thing. That's even sometimes a place to start if you feel like you can't write about that past pain. It's too painful.
Mm-hmm. Well, you mentioned clarity, and that's absolutely crucial, because when you're in a toxic relationship, I mean, the hallmark of a toxic relationship is confusion. Mm-hmm. Because you don't know what's going on. And, one time the person says this, then the person says that. Yeah. They totally contradict themselves. He asks you to do A, you do A, now he wants B, So anything that you can do to start looking for the clarity will help you to recover. Mm-hmm. And that's, one of the benefits that you can get from writing your experiences, because then you can start to see the pattern. Well, wait a minute, he did this, I didn't do it. He did this, I didn't do it, right. Or something along those lines. So that will help you a lot to understand what's going on, and understand that no, it's not you, it's this person, and they're the one that's doing it. And eventually you probably will figure out that you can't fix it.
Yes.
And nothing you can do, or nothing you could have done, ever would have made any difference.
That is so key. And it's one of those revelations that you kind of get slowly. One of them is, you kind of get, well, I was disappointed. Like, you mean all of it was not true. Like he never really loved me. It was all a game. And it's just like devastating. And your mind keeps wanting to go back there. Like, surely this trip was it was an amazing trip. And surely that, and eventually you come to realize, no, it was all a game to them. And so, yeah, it's crazy. But writing is very healthy because, like you might even think, maybe I'm a little crazy, or maybe, it's me, like you said, it's me. Writing is so healthy to explore yourself. And let me just tell you, you are not crazy. Nobody listening to this is crazy, because, you're seeking out, solutions and trying to figure out yourself. And that's what writing is all about, is trying to figure out who you really are, who you want to be, who you can be, and just reinventing yourself. Mm-hmm. So.
And actually, speaking of crazy, I mean, keep in mind that the toxic person is telling you that you're crazy.
Yes.
And so this is one of the ways that, you can see it right in front of you. No, I'm not crazy. And so I think that's real helpful as well.
Now, as we get into looking at other, like the next relationship, first of all, I think you need to be really happy with yourself and enjoy yourself, make your own decisions, be comfortable saying no or having your boundaries, right? I mean, like that's another thing to write about. Hey, here's my boundaries, and here's what I'm going to do if somebody tries to cross my boundaries. Having that plan ahead of time really helps you. Yes. Really helps you. And so you can even Google different types of boundaries. You can have psychological, physical, emotional, all of those types of things. But as you're thinking about, once you feel like you've healed, as you're thinking about a new relationship, you can also think about, okay, what is this new relationship all about? And you can journal or write about that new relationship, and that will help you recognize some red flags. Mm-hmm. First of all, once you're a healed person, you're less of a target. You're less attractive to some of those sociopaths, narcissists, all of those type of folks. So they're going to know right up front. You hold yourself more confidently. You're going to call them out on things. You're not going to accept they're just pat answers for things. And you're going to want that conversation to be both ways as far as, inquiries. But as you're writing, you're going to recognize some of the red flags maybe that a new relationship would have. So tell us, what are some of those red flags that you want to make sure to look out for in a new relationship?
Well, I have a whole book about that. It's called Red Flags of Love Fraud, 10 Signs You're Dating a Sociopath.
Yes.
And that actually came about because of the stories that I kept hearing. I had my own experience and what I went through, but then I started hearing the same thing over and over and over. And then I did some survey research to confirm it. But like the first one, of course, we've referred to already, and that's love bombing. And, because that's one of the things that many of these exploiters and manipulators will do. Mm-hmm. They will shower you with attention. They'll tell you how wonderful you are. They want to see you 24/7, put you up on a pedestal so high that you can't breathe, Yeah. And so that's one of the things. Another thing that I found, especially when dealing with these disordered individuals, is that typically they tend to be charismatic and charming. Yes. Now, this isn't foolproof because I have, of course, none of these are foolproof because there's always exceptions. But most people that I spoke to, when they met this individual, they just had this magnetic energy about them. They were just so wonderful. And so that's one of the things that can happen. Another thing that happens is that I refer to it as the sudden soulmate. You meet this person and, they seem to be just like you. You have all the same values, and they tell you they have the same interests as you. And of course, we talked about this before. The reason that they have all these same values and interests is because they've been interviewing you.
Yes.
They're asking you what you want, and then they turn themselves into what it is that you're looking for.
Perfect person.
Yes, and then they say, "Oh my goodness, we have so much in common. We must be meant for each other. We're soulmates."
Yeah.
And so another one of the qualities to watch out for is sexual magnetism.
Yes.
Especially people who are antisocial or narcissistic and borderlines as well, and histrionic, all four of them. They typically have really high sexual energy, and one of the reasons is because they all have high testosterone. Even the women have high levels of testosterone. So what we have, these are the top signs that I've found, and you may have noticed that these are all also the signs of a dream date.
Yes.
Who doesn't want to go out with somebody who's charismatic and charming and sexy and thinks you're wonderful and wants to be around you all the time?
Attractive to you.
Right. So the next one is blaming others for everything that's in their life.
Yeah.
And this is a really critical sign because just about all disordered individuals do this. Anything that goes wrong, it's not their fault. Somebody else screwed up. Somebody else is out to get them. Their boss is stupid, or they had a car accident. Who knows? But this is fairly common. And what's important about this sign is that it's not positive. Somebody who doesn't accept responsibility for anything in their life. This is a real warning sign. So that's one of the things that, if you have this person who's, being charming and thinks you're wonderful and wants to be around you all the time, but they won't take responsibility for anything.
The thing about that is you don't really recognize it as them not taking responsibility. You feel sorry for them. Oh, you had such a poor childhood. Oh, your boss fired you? That's not right. And, it's like it doesn't look like non-responsibility until you get further down the road and you're hooked. It's too late. I was, looking back, you realize, wow, he didn't ever take responsibility. It was always somebody else's fault. But initially it just looks like, oh, you poor thing. And then we are natural nurturers a lot of times, and just like, let me take care of you and I'll treat you right. And just that emotional bonding is what that's for, right?
Yes, and actually you just identified another one of the warning signs, which is called the pity play.
Yes.
And, so what someone will typically do is try and make you feel sorry for them.
Yeah.
When I first met my sociopathic ex-husband, the first time we met in common, he started talking about his dead wife. And it's like, and he's showing me pictures and everything like that. And this was all very calculated. The idea was to, try and make me feel sorry for them.
Yeah.
And in fact, Dr. Martha Stout, in her book, The Sociopath Next Door, she says that's the number one sign that you're dealing with a sociopath, is that the person plays on your sympathies. And I certainly found that to be one of the top warning signs, in my research, although it wasn't the top one, but it's certainly up there. But like I said, now we've got two that are kind of negative, that are related. They blame other people and they try and make you feel sorry for them.
Right.
So, those are probably the two biggest warning signs that you will see right away. Or close to the beginning of relationship, because a lot of the other ones, like for example, lies and deception. The thing about lying is that you don't know they're lying.
Right.
So we've had research that shows that many of these traits of disorder people don't see until 3, 6, or 12 months into the relationship.
Yeah.
So that's why the blaming and the pity play are so important, because 10 to 1, you will see that right away.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, here's where writing can come into play, because you can say, here's what happened on my date, or here's what happened. And then what your brain might not recognize, your writing will. It's that subconscious coming out like, oh, wow, maybe I see a pattern that I didn't see before, and it's coming out. And that's why I love also, once you get that free write out and you're free writing and that's a jumbled mess, you pull the wisdom out of that writing. That's actually the third step in writing, is that finding that wisdom that you really have learned, but you haven't utilized yet. And that's a beautiful thing. You can start seeing those patterns. You can start seeing some of the amazing things that you just didn't recognize. Your brain just didn't recognize. It's trying to protect you from what's happening, right? I think that's what's happening. Your brain is trying to protect you by hiding it from you, but in writing it out, you can see it in black and white and what's really, really happening. And then one other thing I wanted to share, the last step is actually elevating your writing. And the scary thing about that is people say, I don't ever want to share. And you don't ever have to share your writing with anybody. It's just healthy to get it out for sure. But I always say, and Donna, this is something that you've done. What if someone's about to go through what you've been through? Or what if someone is in the midst of going through what you've been through? Wouldn't you want to share what you've learned? And I'm really excited about like everything that you've done. And you even have courses and things like that, all the stuff that you've learned. And then you've done research, like valid, absolutely strong research around this so that you can share that knowledge. And I love that. I really love it. People don't have to take this step, but I'm grateful for people who do, like you, who can share that wisdom and share what they've learned to help others. So,
well, I've spoken to quite a few people who do want to share what they've experienced, if only to protect them from the particular toxic person that they were involved with. You know,
right.
And it actually becomes kind of tricky because you do have to worry about, I mean, if you intend to share publicly, which even on a blog is, you know, putting it out in the public, depending on who you tangled with, you may need to worry about defamation and things like that. So, you know, quite a few people write anonymously and you know, cover the names, and that's certainly a valid way to go. But for those who want to expose, you know, what the person has done, it becomes tricky, you know, because there's defamation per se. And what that means is that if you do any of these things, it automatically is considered to be defamation. And the things that are in this list of that you're not supposed to, that automatically become defamation include like anything to do with somebody's profession, anything to do with their sexual activity, anything to do with their health. You know, so if you're trying to write about a sociopath, you got a guy who's cheating or a woman who's cheating in their profession. You got someone who's like, you know, having multiple affairs, illicit affairs, and you have someone with a, you know, personality disorder. So you know, if you start writing about all this stuff, you know, you got to be concerned about whether or not this person's going to turn around and sue you for it.
Yeah.
Now,
and they will have no compunction around doing that. Like if they can hurt you, they will.
Right. So people often ask me, well, how did you do it? You know, because I did name my ex-husband, and what happened was, I mean, I was in my divorce, I was given the opportunity to settle. He said, well, you keep these artifacts that we had collected and you take care of the debts and we'll just go our separate ways. And I'm like, no way. Are you kidding me? You know, after all the money this guy cost me and everything. So I took it to court. And although I never got the financial judgment that I wanted, I did get a finding of fraud. You know, the judge found that my ex-husband defrauded me, and that became what enabled me to, you know, go ahead and do everything that I've done, because you know, the judge said he committed fraud, you know, throughout our relationship and marriage fraud.
Public record.
Yes, that's public record. And then also I got a judgment. So, I mean, my ex took $227,000 from me, and I wanted that back, and I wanted damages. And so the judge awarded that to me, and plus $1 million in punitive damages. So I have this nice big judgment against my ex. And if you want to come after me, you know, go right ahead.
Yeah.
You know? But not everybody has this situation.
No, not everybody does.
And I'm very glad that I did that, because it has given me the ability to talk about my story the way that I have.
Yeah.
So, So that becomes a definite consideration as far as, do you want to really name who this person is? Right. And the thing is, I mean, if you have court records that prove what he has done, you can use anything that's in a court record. So if you're in the process of divorcing the person, what I would suggest is that you tell your entire story in your affidavit.
It's a great idea. I didn't even think about that.
Yes. Because I mean, everything, even all these details that really don't necessarily have to do with what you want, any settlement or anything like that. Because once it's in the public record, you can use it, and they can't come after you.
Yeah. That is super good. A lot of people also, I mean, to heal will, some people will say, like, Augusta Burroughs said, hey, these are events that happened as I remember them. So nobody can question your own, but you still can't defame the other person. But sometimes people will write like a fiction book or a fiction narrative. And of course, publishing takes so long. So it's not like, hopefully you're done with all that court stuff by the time it comes out. But if you write a piece of fiction, but it's really your story, you change the names, like even if you change the names and it is a nonfiction, it's still a danger to you, I think, in a lot of ways. You really have to get an attorney and look at that, and have them review. But if you write a piece of fiction, it's fiction, right? And so you can get it out that way. Speaking of getting out, I also wanted to mention, if you're still in the relationship, or if you're getting a divorce, or you're something where they might have access to your stuff, it can all either, number one, disappear, and number two, be accessed by them. So what you can do is, so that your pages or whatever, your computer might be taken, I used to send messages to my work email. If you can do that, you can do that. I would say, here's what happened, and send it. And when I would go to work, I would save it on that. So that's one of the ways that you can, because if you do have a journal, a physical journal, you can, that could disappear. Your own laptop, that can disappear unless you're saving it to the cloud. You can also send an email to a friend or family member that is sympathetic to you, and say, listen, if it has this in the title at all, like apples or something, a code word, then our grocery list, whatever it is, save it. And that's how you can get some of that writing out as well, without somebody else possibly finding it.
Well, I mean, that's a very good point, because I have certainly spoken to plenty of people who, their journals were accessed, their records were accessed, things disappeared. So yes, I mean, you absolutely do need to be concerned about that and take precautions.
Yeah. So we've talked about that gap between, you've got a toxic relationship, or you're out of a toxic relationship. You definitely don't want to get into another one. Let's heal, doing, lots of different ways, exploring yourself and all that sort of thing. And so I have, if anybody is interested in exploring that, a free download called How to Free Write Your Stories, Your Tough Life Stories. Just get them out of your head. And free writing is a specific method that really helps you, like, get them out of your head, and so you can heal from them. Messy, ugly junk, just get it out of your head so you can then start recognizing it. And so there's a very specific method. And then, Donna, I know you have all kinds of amazing, your books are on my top 35 books for emotional abuse recovery. And but you've got some courses too. Tell us about that.
Well, we offer two kinds of courses. We offer courses for survivors, and we actually have three different categories of courses, one of which is, are you dating a sociopath, or is your partner a sociopath, to help you identify what you're dealing with. We also have a quite a good collection of courses related to leaving or divorcing a sociopath.
Yeah.
And then we have a collection of courses related to recovering from a sociopath.
Yeah.
So
nice.
it's all terrific information.
Covered the whole gamut.
Yeah. And besides that, we also offer some professional training for therapists. We have found through other research that approximately half of therapists really don't understand what happens when somebody is involved with this type of a relationship. And so, we wanted to help therapists, brush up on their skills and learn what goes on. So we do offer some programs for therapists as well.
I love that because that's a whole nother discussion because it's so true. A lot of times we'll get involved with therapists and they will end up being suckered in by the sociopath and it's like double disappointment and you're like shocked, but everybody can be fooled by sociopaths. So thank you for putting those resources out. And thank you for this conversation. This has been fun. I love it.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you being willing to do it. And I think it's a lot of great information that will help people.
Yep, absolutely. All right. Thanks a lot.
All right. Thanks a lot, Stacy.